I'll be, at some point, I'm going to be so presidential that you people will be so bored, and I'll come back as a presidential person, and instead of 10,000 people, I'll have about 150 people, and they'll say, but boy, he really looks presidential.
That was then candidate Donald Trump 3.5 years ago. When Trump was elected, some held out hope that he would grow in office. But it's hard to make the case he's changed all that much. And one of the men who knew him best, Tony Schwartz, Trump's co-author of Art of the Deal, has a new piece in the Washington Post arguing that Trump cannot change no matter what the consequences are. And impeachment might have made him worse. Schwartz writes, the negative qualities we ascribe to others are often those we find it most intolerable to see in ourselves. Throughout his adult life, Trump has viewed the world as a dark, dangerous place, teeming with enemies out to get him. In the face of potential impeachment, this fear has escalated exponentially. The threat he imagines is no longer just to his fragile sense of self, but realistically to his future as president. Any capacity Trump ever had to think clearly or calmly has evaporated. Now, like a drowning man, all that matters to him is survival, no matter how much collateral damage his behaviors cause. And joining us now here on set is Tony Schwartz. Tony, it's really good to see you.
Likewise.
So Donald Trump today, 2019, is it the same man that you knew all those years ago?
In the fundamental ways, yes. But I would say when you said he hasn't changed much, he actually has changed, and he's gotten worse. I mean, considerably worse. He was a non-ideological guy when I knew him. He was purely out for himself and not thinking about, the wider world that much. And he was riding high. This is in the 1980s. This was, just before it all fell apart. So he wasn't under stress. And we are two different people. We're the person we are when we're being run by our prefrontal cortex, and then under stress, we're run by a much more primitive part of our brain.
Back then, I guess you could say that he had money to lose, but then there was always money to fall back on. Now he has the presidency, a place that maybe he thought deep down he might get to, but that nobody expected him to. He's got a lot to lose now. How is that affecting the judgment that you once knew so well?
So it's physiological first. I mean, that's really important to know, that when you are under stress, you move into this fight or flight state, and basically your prefrontal cortex, your thinking mind, shuts down, and you become reactive and impulsive. You're about your survival. So you don't think well. Well, Trump starts off, as you know, not thinking well. He's not reflective. He's not introspective. He doesn't spend time thinking things through, and he doesn't read. So now you have a situation in which this is vastly more intense for him, and I think he is in pure reactive mode.
What happens? I mean, say impeachment passes, and maybe he gets impeached and he doesn't get thrown out. The Senate doesn't vote to remove him from office, but he goes along in the last year of his presidency, and the polls look terrible for him in the lead up to 2020, much in the same way they did in the lead up to 2016. What sort of behavior should we expect then?
I think this is a man who's been aggrieved, grew up in an incredibly wealthy family, but has felt aggrieved and put upon since he was a young kid. He's never felt more put upon than he does right now. He really does genuinely believe he's a victim. And whichever way this goes, even if he is, ultimately not found, not impeached, not convicted, he will be one angry man all the way through to November.
Let me ask you about the letter he sent to President Erdogan. He said, history will look upon you favorably if you get this done right and humane way. It'll look upon you forever as the devil if good things don't happen. Don't be a tough guy. Don't be a fool. I will call you later. Explain that to me.
Yeah. Well, it's not very complex. Those are very simple sentences. He's a binary thinker. He's a black and white guy. Yeah. It's either this or it's that. It's either good or it's evil. And he projects onto other people, as you read from my piece earlier.
He's the I'm rubber and you're glue president.
Well, he literally describes himself. What is now already that famous quote about Pelosi being the person who is melting down. That was an exact description of him. And that is so frequently the case. Just follow his tweets and you know what's really going on inside him.
Or the Hillary Clinton, no puppet, or you're a puppet, and he says no puppet during the debates in 2016. Tony Schwartz, always good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.